When did you start questioning your conservative beliefs, and what was the catalyst for causing you to have those questions?
In 1964, I was a rabid supporter of Barry Goldwater. I sent you a copy of my biology notebook with the Goldwater in 64 sticker. I put that on all my books, right? I was not old enough to vote, but I felt like he was going to save us. Extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. He understood that the time was short, and he understood the moral peril of the country and that we didn't have time. And we needed to be saved by him because we weren't getting the job done. There wasn't enough of us, and we couldn't wake the country up enough. And when he lost, I was absolutely devastated. And there was one other person in my class, in the class of 1968, who felt the exact same way. And we are, of course, friends to this day. But everybody else, no. I mean, I went to a Catholic college of New Rochelle, right there. These were typically first generation going to college women. It was a women's school. But they were the kids of firemen and cops, union workers, and, what was then the middle class, like the working class / middle class. They were very democratic, because Roosevelt had given them the right to be in unions and had saved them during the Depression and all this kind of stuff. So they were a pretty liberal group. And the nuns that we were taught by, the Ursulines, were these brilliant, brilliant women who went down to Freedom Summer, which I did not know, but they went down to Freedom Summer and got themselves arrested and all that kind of stuff. So that was the environment of my college. And then the Vietnam War started, and all of a sudden, brothers and uncles and cousins and husbands and friends were getting drafted and going to fight in this war. And we thought, oh, it's a war against communism, so it's righteous. But then they came back, in body bags and coffins. And, at that time, the press would show what was going on. And you just had to wonder. I mean, I still thought, well, if you don't support the war, you're a communist or a communist sympathizer. And my friends, to their credit, I was never ostracized by them. They accepted me for all of my crazy views anyway, and they would just talk to me. They would talk to me. They didn't judge me. They didn't dismiss me. They just talked to me. And I thought, there's something wrong here where everyone that I know and everyone that I can talk to and everyone that I love has completely different views from me. Why? And then, as the war went on, and kids, who were getting drafted, so it was a big deal for them, they started organizing against it, which I thought, of course, was communist and so on. But the professors got involved, the teachers got involved, and they started having these things called teach-ins, where they would tell you an alternate version of the history that I had learned in grammar school and high school. College was completely different. College was college. I mean, it wasn't propaganda. It was good. But so I would go to some of these teach-ins, and I was like, we did what in Guatemala? We did what in Iran? What? What do you mean we overthrew governments? Like, what? Why? I learned about how, there was, they wanted to project economic power into Southeast Asia, too. It was resource rich. So then I thought, wait a minute, this doesn't all add up. There's somebody was lying. Somebody's telling the truth and somebody's lying. Which one is it? So that was what kind of planted the seeds of doubt, but it never would have planted the seeds of doubt if I hadn't had friends who just talked to me, who didn't ostracize me or judge me or talk about me behind my back. They just accepted me for who I was.
I would also imagine these friends that you had in college who were pro-civil rights, anti-war, but also accepted you and listened to you and treated you with respect, part of you must have been like, wait, these commies are not the people I was told they were.
That's true, because they treated me very differently than I would have treated them, because I would have dismissed them as either brainwashed, lazy, communist dupes, pinkos, or just out and out commies. They listened to me, and then I started to listen to them, and it just, all of these contradictions that I had just let slide in the past part of my life, how you can burn up the Constitution to protect the Constitution. You can lock people up for having certain thoughts in order to protect their right to free expression. I mean, all of those contradictions started kind of bubbling up to the surface. And then in 1967, the country exploded. I mean, in 1965, the country started to burn. And in 1967, it happened again. And there were riots, and there were race riots. And I'm like, wait a minute. Italians never had riots. Why are black people having riots? My family was able to make it, out of dire poverty. How come these folks can't do it? Are they just, like I always learned, they're just lazy? Well, they're not lazy enough to have a riot. So that's something. There's too much anger there. That doesn't compute.
You're starting to learn sort of an alternate historical account of the United States, learn about things that you didn't know took place, starting to see cracks in this idea, and then starting to see this anger of black people boil up during the civil rights movement. These people that you've been sort of told and taught were lazy,
right,
and that's why they couldn't get ahead, unlike the Italians and the Irish,
right,
who pulled themselves
right,
up by their bootstraps. So with all this bubbling up, what caused you to take that next step into rejecting conservatism altogether?
Okay. All right. So picture this. It's the winter and spring of 1968. The President of the United States announces he won't run for re-election. Eugene McCarthy has been running as an anti-war candidate, challenging the sitting president for the presidency. Johnson decides he has to step aside because he can't unite the country. Then Martin Luther King is murdered, and the whole country erupts. And then Robert Kennedy steps in, and he's moving toward being the nominee, and then he's murdered. And I was just like, what is going on? In a way, I'm thinking to myself, we always thought that some of these people who have the right thoughts, wrong thoughts, need to be neutralized, but not murdered, but neutralized. Like they need to be attacked, their views need to be exposed, they need to be shown to be communist sympathizers or whatever. And then I'm thinking, it's not that big a leap to this extreme form of violence that I'm seeing all around us. So then I thought, all right, here's the test. I'm graduating from college. A whole bunch of my friends are going into the Peace Corps. Why I didn't go, I'm not sure. But a lot of my friends went to the Peace Corps. And then a lot of my friends joined the New York City Department of Welfare, because it was well known at that time, all you had to do was pass a test that any imbecile could pass, and they would hire you. And I thought, okay, let's see who's telling the truth. I believe that there are welfare queens who drive in from New Jersey to pick up their welfare checks in their Cadillacs. And they get out, they go to the welfare department, pick up their check, and drive back to New Jersey and live in their mansion. And that there's just so many of these, and they're all black people, of course. Is that true? And are the people on welfare just a bunch of lazy slugs who are just sitting there and just so happy that they don't have to work and they can just sit home? And I don't know what you do when you sit home all day. So, okay, I'm going to find out. So I joined the welfare department, which is a whole other story in the New York welfare department, just at that time. I'm like, okay. So I get my caseload. The training consists of, People are entitled to certain things every year, certain amount of money every year for their shoes and whatnot. And ordinarily, we don't give that to people. But this year, because the mayor is up for re-election and he basically wants the city to be quiet this summer, you can give people what they're actually legally entitled to in terms of money for shoes and all stuff. So it's like, great, okay. So I get assigned a building, because that's how it was in New York, and there was concentrated poverty, and I got a building. But I got a really unique building. I got single room occupancy building, and it was full of senior citizens. And these were people on welfare. And I was like, they were the best, the nicest, the most beautiful, most interesting, most polite, most funny, most fascinating people I ever met. One after another, I would just sit there and listen to them tell me stories. And I had one guy who told me Arabic fairy tales. And I just thought, wait, where are the welfare queens? I haven't seen any welfare queens yet. And I was living with 3 other girls who were also in the welfare department. They didn't see any welfare queens. And they had much worse things. They had like the South Bronx. And that was like a war zone at that time. But one of my roommates spoke Spanish. So they stuck her in the South Bronx. And she saw plenty of gangs and stuff like that. But she mostly saw women, single women with kids, trying to make a life for themselves, protect them about what was going on in the streets, trying to make some money on the side and get out of that situation. I remember this Hispanic woman. We were supposed to look under people's beds to make sure that there were no shoes. I was like, oh, come on. Some guy's shoes.
No shoes of their boyfriend that's also
of their
living
boyfriend
with
who would be
them,
giving them money. And so here's this woman, and she's at home with her little daughter, and they're making jewelry with these little beads, and they're stringing them together to make 5 cents, 10 cents, and go out on the street or go out into the parking lot and sell it. And I'm thinking, what the hell? What the hell? And this little girl says to me, will you be my sister? And I was just like, no, this is wrong. This is just wrong. It's all a lie. Everything I have been told is a lie. And I went back to my case supervisor and I said, there is an empty community room at the bottom of this tenement. There are women in this building who are great with kids. Why don't we train a bunch of those women to be child care workers so that the other women in the building who really want to work and get out of this life can go to work? And there'll be somebody and they can't because nobody is taking care of their kids. They don't have any money for it. They don't have an extended family to take care of them. Why don't we do that? It's just a no-brainer. You could you could get all of these people out of poverty. They don't want to be in poverty. Who wants that life? You can barely survive. What are you talking about? I don't see any welfare queens driving Cadillacs. I see people struggling to make a life against all odds. The people who told me about the welfare queens either never went here or they're just lying. Maybe there was a woman from New Jersey who was driving a Cadillac. People game the system. It's human. It's human nature. I would expect, look what happened in COVID, right? People ripped that system off for billions of dollars. It's kind of American to figure out the rules and then game the system.
Right.
Maybe there were 2 welfare queens. I don't know. But that's not what we saw. None of us who are working these streets. What we saw was people desperately trying to live the American dream and having no way out. I learned a whole bunch of things. I learned that I'd been lied to. And once you realize you've been lied to, you don't believe anything that they told you. Because I believed that with my heart and soul, and I read about it in such detail. And, like they say, if you're going to lie specifically. I'm like, they probably lied to me about everything. And so I didn't believe anything anymore that I had been told, because I had seen with my own eyes what it was like.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. That was a clip from one of our full episodes, so if you want to hear more of that discussion, please click the link on your screen. And if you're enjoying these discussions, please like and subscribe and let us know what you think in the comments. And please consider supporting us on Patreon, where you can get early access to our videos and bonus content. Patreon.com/talkingpoliticswithmom. Thanks so much, everybody, and we'll see you next time.